the content production and distribution was more and more centralized in big corporations. And then we had a new revolution, and it was the internet. And what the internet did is that all of a sudden we didn't need middlemen to produce and get content, and all of a sudden people could download music for free, but artists were not paid, so that wasn't a perfect model. So now let's talk about blockchain and NFTs and how it's a new revolution for music. So first, on a high-level note, I want to mention about the new paradigm that is decentralization. Before, we had the Industrial Revolution, where big corporations were focusing on the most profitable products, and that's also true for music, with the music industry, where the industry is going to focus on the most popular artists, the so-called superstars, that have millions of fans, and who are the most profitable, but small artists, it's very hard for them to make a living in this kind of economy. And in the new paradigm of decentralization, the idea is that thanks to internet, even niche products, small communities, small artists have their chance of making a living and distributing their music. So I think a lot of people know here the word Web3, implying that it's a third internet revolution. But let's talk about the first internet revolution. So on one side, on the left, we had the free internet with torrents, with LimeWire, Pirate Bay. I want to mention what that city is. So for people who don't know, it was the biggest torrent database of music in the history of humanity. Actually, it was the biggest record of human music in the history of humanity. And so the advantage is that it was really good quality and that anybody could get whatever music they wanted as long as they uploaded music in return. The problem is that it was illegal and that it was shut down by French authorities, and also that artists weren't paid for music that was downloaded. On the other hand, we have the big corporations who have created a product because they were endangered by the birth of illegal downloads. So they created streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, and so on. And those services had better user experience because open source projects don't really have the money or the will to hire UX developers. But the problem with these platforms is that they don't really pay artists their fair share, and actually only the major artists can make a living out of streamings, and even so they don't really get the full share of their revenues. So here comes NFTs that solve both those problems. At the same time, it allows artists to own their music, to own the full revenue of their music, and in a legal way. And there's it brings complete transparency on the way that revenues are shared to the artist. On the last note, from the high-level analysis on why music and NFTs are great, I want to mention the long tail. So I'm not going to go into detail, but for short, the idea is that if the x-axis is the number of basically of different musics that exist, and the y-axis is the number of people who listen to it. Big corporations have been catching the head, which is 80% of the market, by just tackling 20% of the music that there is, to simplify. And the idea is that with internet, there's a whole long tail of niche products that are listened by very few people, or like not enough for corporations to invest into them, but it's a real market that people care about, and it's real music that people want to listen to. I also mentioned this really cool article about the 1,000 True Fans because it summarizes this idea. The idea is, as a musician, if you just want to make a living out of music, like you don't want to be a star, like all you care is make music and make a living out of it, all you need is 1,000 true fans. Like, so with US standards of living, the calculus is if a true fan spends $100 a year on your product, so that's events, albums, streams, and so on, and then if you have 1,000 true fans, you are making 100K a year, which is enough to live in the US. So at the end of the day, we don't need artists to become super famous. We just need them to have 1,000 true fans. So that brings us to the most interesting or the most talked about feature of music NFTs, and that's royalties. So the advantage of music NFTs is that royalties can be transparently shared to the artist. So it doesn't mean that 100% of the revenues will go to the artist, because the artist might need some services to promote their music, to distribute it, but at least they will have full control of what share of those revenues will go to them. We have a lot of startups here in the Ethereum space working on that. There's one called Opulus. The idea is to make loans to artists and then get money back out of those loans by taking a share of the revenues. So I think it illustrates all the potential and the creativity that is allowed by financing music through NFTs. This slide is an even more extreme version of royalty NFT. They're called IP NFTs. So on the left is a completely out of music example. VitaDAO, what they do is biotech. They finance longevity research, but they are using IP NFTs, or at least they're aiming to do so. Invarsh is on Polkadot and is a blockchain aiming at creating IP NFTs. What's interesting about them is that NFT ownership is a little bit vague, especially when it comes to comparison with the real world. Like, is NFT, is it ownership? Is it a license? Does it give the owner the right to use the art and take revenues out of it? Or is it just the right to use it for personally? IP NFTs are supposed to solve those problems. And now, community building, I think is the other big feature that musicians are really interested in. Actually, to prepare this presentation, I have interviewed a lot of musicians that are on .comm. Most of them are in the Chaos Collective. And they did mention revenues, of course, but community was one of the things that they appreciated the most about the blockchain space, and .comm in particular. There's a lot of flexibility with NFTs. People can basically sell NFTs that represent access to exclusive content or events or maybe even music. And I learned that Coachella, the famous Californian festival, is now making NFTs for proof of attendance, just like a lot of crypto conferences are doing. And I think it completely makes sense because people want to share their experience and want to share the concerts they go to. Also, I saw this startup called Pianity. It's interesting because they're playing on different levels of scarcity, and it's gamifying music and creating, basically, it's creating content and hype around the community. So I think it's an interesting tool for musicians as well. So on this slide, we have generative NFTs or parametric NFTs. So you probably know them in 2D. Maybe the most famous one is Bored Ape. The idea is that we can tweak a few parameters. In the case of 2D, it's maybe features of a profile pic. In the case of music, it can be the drums, it can be the BPM, it can be the melody, it can be filters. And basically, we can randomly create a collection of thousands of pieces of music. So what is the difference between generative NFT and parametric? It's very close. The difference is that with parametric, the user can play around in an interface and then mint an NFT that they have found by playing around. So Vibes.xyz is a really interesting project that allows the user to do that, to basically tweak all these parameters, and it will create different music. Here we have 2 projects on Ethereum, OMG Kirby and Audioglyphs, that are working on similar concepts. And then there is composable music, which is actually what brought me to music NFTs recently. I actually even developed a proof of concept that I'm going to talk about later. But here on the top, you see 3 projects that are already doing that on Ethereum. Async Art, Secret Garden, and Stems DAO. The idea, it's always a little bit different, but the idea is that we're going to have an artist that create a base, which is a collection of music samples, a collection of loops. So for those who are familiar with electronic music creation or most modern music creation, a musician records the different instruments. So there are the drums, the bass, synthesizer, guitar, all of this separated, and a producer can remix them, play around with them, and create new songs. And the idea here is those websites allow the user to do so, but with samples of music that are NFTs. So the third one, Stem DAO, for example, is a pretty cool project, in my opinion, where they ask artists to create bits of music, and then they organize remix contests. And the idea is that the user is also an artist, and it's breaking the boundary between artist and consumer, basically. And then we have the most extreme version of music NFTs, in my opinion. So DAW is the technical term for an interface to create music, such as Ableton, Fruity Loops. And RPG created DAW on the browser, where users can create a whole music, and the whole process is turned into an NFT. On the right, we have a project that is not NFT related, but really interesting in my opinion. It's called React Tronica. It's a React library, so front-end library, that allows user to use components, React components, that are either filters or audio synthesizers, samplers, all of this open source, and that's what I use to create my proof of concept. So all I've talked about before is just general music NFTs, not specific to Dotsama. But so now, why is Dotsama a particularly good blockchain to be as a musician? Well, so I've asked around the musicians of Dotsama, of course. I think the #1 thing that came up is that it's the most innovative ecosystem that's out there. Like, that's something that a lot of musicians are focusing on. They just don't want to make the same music that they were making before. They want to innovate. They want to be in a community that strives for new feature and innovation. Second thing that came up, of course, is the great community. How basically, as a musician, it's hard to find support, and in this community, people are really interested in innovation, in people trying. There will be chaos, so people are accepting of other people's failure if they're trying to do something new, and that's really cool for musicians. And finally, I think it's not negligible, is that Polkadot and Kusama are proof-of-stake blockchains, and so they are environmentally friendly, and for a lot of artists, that's something that's pretty important. Here we have a little screenshot talking about the great developer activity on Dotsama. So as you all know, probably here, Polkadot is a pretty big ecosystem of blockchains, of parachains. There are many different formats, many different languages, and that means a lot of different possibilities for musicians. Different standards that have different features. So on the left, we have all the EVM-compatible formats that already exist on Ethereum and that work with all the EVM-compatible parachains that are out there, and the platforms also. Here we have ink-based NFTs. So a lot of new parachains are working on other languages, and they want to create new formats. And finally, we have Remark. So Remark originally was a standard for NFT that was supposed to be multi-chain. And then Remark 2.0 is actually what brought me here, because it brought composability. And I thought that composability is really cool because for music, it means that one can create a new song out of pieces of music. And for me, that's actually one of the most interesting aspects of electronic music. So enough about the technology. Just wanted to mention a few artists. So most musicians on .sama are in the Chaos Collective. Not all. For example, you might have noticed I'm wearing a Nadir World t-shirt. It's an artist friend of mine who released a few video clips and music on .sama. But here we have a lot of Chaos Collective artists, not all of them. Actually, I think I'm going to publish the interviews that I did with them later in some form. Here we have a little collage of some of the artworks that they did. We have the Burp Tapes by Bowser Stacks. We have Rich Valentino's album. We have Rubentopia. I don't think he's part of the collective, I'm not sure. And here there is this multi-resource album that I recommend that everybody buys. It's really good. It has the best of all the artists in the collective. And the interface that you see is singular. So it shows how we're using multi-resource NFTs to create an album that is one NFT. Something that is really neat for music, I think. And then I wanted to mention Neon Crisis, a project that is the fruit of a collaboration between two artists from the Chaos Collective. What's interesting about it, in my opinion, is that it's multimedia. It's at the same time music, a book, images. It's a whole metaverse, a whole universe. And what's great about NFTs is that it allows artists to create new things that not merely reproduce what was before, but transcend the medium itself. And that's something I think is really exciting. So now let's talk about the proof of concept that I made for music NFTs. So personally, I'm a big fan of electronic music, and I was trying to figure out what NFTs can bring to music as something innovative that will create something new. So I thought about the drum machines and the samplers that in the 70s have revolutionized music. Thanks to them, we have techno, house, hip-hop, all the modern genres basically, where start from the idea that a musician can sample a loop and then they can sequence it into a beat. So they can start with a kick and then a snare, hi-hat, bass, and then samples, and then we have new music. So today in the era of Web 2.0, we have Splice. Splice is a pretty cool platform that is basically a market for music samples where artists can legally sample something and retribute the artist that created the original sample. But this is still very much Web 2.0, so I think now we have to create the same markets, but in a decentralized manner. StemsDAO, I mentioned before, is trying to do something similar, but I wanted to do something on .sama. So this is my proof of concept. Right now has only 2 artists. Might have other joining in later. So the idea is to illustrate what composable NFTs are for music. Here is a song separated into different tracks, the different instruments, and there are different possibilities for each of those instruments. And what I'm imagining is that in the future, people can buy those. Like each of these buttons is a music loop, and then they can add them onto their own sampler, like a composable NFT, and it creates a new song. And then they can play around, maybe record it. Maybe the record itself is a new NFT that is spawned out of a composable NFT. There are so many possibilities, but first, I just wanted to make something really simple because I wanted to get feedback from the community on the user experience and what exactly they're looking for in music NFTs. So please check it out and send me feedback on Twitter. So we're reaching the end of my talk, and I want to mention Ethereum. So I come from the space of Ethereum, but also I think it's impossible not to mention it when it comes to the most famous collections and the volume. So here we have a comparison of standards on both .sama and Ethereum. So it looks like there are way more possibilities on .sama, and that's true. There are way more standards, way more teams trying to make something different. But I think we shouldn't forget that the two standards that are on Ethereum have the biggest volume and are the most famous projects. So I don't think it's possible to really ignore them. And so that's why I think that what most projects should be doing is, like Moonzama, find a hybrid architecture where somehow we're bridging the two worlds. Like we want the money and the security and the prestige of Ethereum, but we want the features and the innovation of .sama. And I think it's possible to build DAOs or NFT projects that are using both, and that actually could be another subject of a talk. The technical implementation is not that easy, but for me, that's really the future. So finally, I want to finish with how we can improve, because it's the spirit of this ecosystem, right, that we're still building and we're still innovating. I've asked a lot of musicians what they wanted to change, and I think number one that everybody agreed on is that we need a music player, some kind of music app that plays NFTs. So we already have that with Singular, Talisman, and Polkadot, but they're not really music specialized. And so we need an interface that's really music specialized, but more importantly, it should be a mobile app, because we want to be able to listen to our music when we walk around. We want to have our NFT library in our pockets. And unfortunately, a mobile app and a music app is a lot of work. So let's see who can succeed in doing that. I think another challenge, of course, is we need to onboard more people. We need to communicate a lot on the innovations of the ecosystem. I've heard things about licensing. So what I was mentioning about IP NFTs is we need more standards on royalty distribution. And finally, I heard an idea that is actually exciting me, is we should definitely organize a music festival for .sama now that the pandemic is slowing down. And that's it for my recommendations. I have no doubt that we will all going to make it. And finally, I want to thank Coxed, who helped me make the presentation. I want to thank the whole Chaos Collective, who are great people and who really gave me good insights on music NFTs in .sama. I want to thank the FVK, who did a great thread on Twitter. I think it was yesterday or the day before, that helped me out. And finally, of course, the whole community, who, as usual, is very supportive. And of course, the organizers of ParisDOT.comm, who made these great events that I'm really glad to be part of.
Thank you very much, Antoine. Thank you for your presentation. Maybe we have Amir in the auditorium. Thank you. Maybe we have a little bit time if you are agreed to take one or two questions. If we have, sure. I don't know if you have some questions. Yeah? No? No question for Antoine? No, I think it was clear and complete. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, as mentioned yesterday, don't hesitate to connect in the Pillar Room and around the venue. Next presentation soon.
Hi. Hello, hello. Yeah? Okay, thank you very much, Antoine, for your presentation. And please welcome our next speaker, it's Irina Karagao. Sorry, I hope I don't misspell it, from Unique Network.
Good morning, Paris. Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here today. We've been waiting for this event for quite some time, right? Because we always talk about multi-chain and collaboration, building ecosystems, and it is extremely important to be united in a physical space and in a virtual space to be able to get together and build collaborative, inclusive ecosystems. And today I'm going to talk about building the ecosystem 3.0. Just like we're building the web 3.0, we need to support this, not just from the technology point of view, but also from the community, businesses, projects, etc. Any idea what this is? Polkadot chasing Ethereum. Polkadot is an Ethereum killer. Have you ever read these headlines? World competition and the strategy of predators and prey, when we compete to the level of eliminating other businesses from the space, comes from the war, from the strategies, the term strategy, it all comes from the war. But times have changed. The world is an open space, and we all are here to work on a paradigm shift. We are all here to create new, inclusive, not only internet, not only Web3, but the world. There is more open, there is more democratic, where everybody can have ownership of their assets, can have ownership of their data, and can communicate and feel free and exchange value over the internet. So I want to pay attention to, here in Paris during ECC, once and forever, to finish the war between ecosystems and say that Bitcoin was attacked and many people were saying, oh, Bitcoin is going to disappear. It didn't. Many people were saying, oh, Ethereum is going to disappear. It won't. Because we're here to build an ecosystem of the Web3. And we will have many more players, we will have many more chains, and Polkadot will be one of these big players that will enable new collaborations and new technology to unleash the Web3 space, to scale it, and to make it more advanced. And for everybody from Ethereum ecosystem and other chains, I would like to underline the mission statement of Polkadot. We envision a web where our identity and our data is our own, safely secured from any central authority. Polkadot will enable a completely decentralized web where users are in control. Polkadot is built to connect private and consortium chains, public and permissionless networks, oracles, and future technologies that are yet to be created. Polkadot facilitates an internet where independent blockchains can exchange information and transactions in trustless way via the Polkadot relay chain. Polkadot makes it easier than ever to create and connect decentralized applications, services, and institutions. By empowering innovators to build better solutions, we seek to free society from its reliance on a broken web where its large institutions can violate our trust. As you can see, there is no fierce competition here. It's all about collaboration, building open world, empowering innovators, empowering creators. So we're actually talking about such concepts, just like it exists in the biological ecosystems. It's mutualism. It's Polkadot that enables Ethereum. So we have this cute Polkadot bee pollinating Ethereum flower, or any other one, because it is about building synergies and it is about opening up opportunities. And in Unique Network, we're building NFT solutions. We're NFT-specific parachain, both on Kusama and Polkadot. We're in close collaboration with Remark. We're open source, and we are here to build and offer technologies for all other ecosystems that will take NFTs to the next level. We must remember one thing, that before, when Bitcoin appeared, we were talking about cryptocurrencies. The space opened up with cryptocurrencies and monetary value proposition added to the economy. When Ethereum appeared, we began talking about smart contracts and about building more complex applications for the Web3. Now that we have NFTs, we're talking about crypto assets. This is a completely new layer of the Web3 that is not so dependent on the market, because you have all seen that NFT space has not been that much affected by the current market conditions, especially when we talk about NFT utility and when we find projects that really care about users and utility of these NFTs, and projects that care about community. Because in the bottom line, technology is just a technology. And what is important is that as the people using this technology, peer-to-peer is not just a node-to-node, server-to-server. Peer-to-peer is human-to-human. We must always remember why we're building this Web3. We must always keep people in mind. And that will allow us to build really, truly useful solutions that will solve real-world problems, that will empower users, or rather people, to give them the opportunity to build new social networks and to bring their assets, to bring their ownership in any ecosystem, in any space they wish, to enable a really a web that is inclusive and a space that allows you to communicate with each other. Just like Web 2 gave us YouTube and Facebook, and we now heavily criticize them, but there was a purpose, there was a mission to unite people via the social platforms. We now are heavily involved in these social networks. We're using messaging, we are in contact with each other 24/7 via social messaging, and that's the beauty of it. So we must now come to the next stage and progress in the technology and guarantee that we're not only exchanging information, but we're also bringing value, and we're the owners of that value and of our own data. So we always talk about silos and data, but we must also talk about silos in ecosystems and connecting people together. So in order to achieve this, we don't exclude ourselves from our ecosystems, but rather we provide new functionalities that will unlock the potential of other ecosystems. Because from the human perspective, from the user's perspective, or from the creator's perspective, technology is under the hood. It's not something that an artist would care if he's minting. He wouldn't care to which ecosystem to belong. He would care about the environment that is created by the platform. He would care about the community. He would care about creating and monetizing the value that he provides. Therefore, we will see many more creators wanting to be present in every platform and in every ecosystem. And we should allow this, because we must be inclusive. And in order to power this technologically, we at Unique Network have created flexible economic models that enable freemium gaming, that allow you to create new administration structures and new business models. And this can be done way easier now with user interaction. The blockchain is under the hood. The builders do not need to care about the complexities of the blockchain. They can take care of their users, they can take care of the people in the community, and build the businesses, the platforms that power the creator, where they can own their NFTs and they can transact them and scale. So the important thing is that we can now offer scalable and complex native NFT functionality. We are able, as of today, to create 140,000 NFTs in one block. And we can make it free for users using sponsorship of transaction fees. We also can make them refundable, and I will get to that in a minute. And we can enable complex nested functionalities, which previous speaker mentioned the case study of music industry. So we can do this for art, for literature, for publishing, for ticketing, for all sorts of companies. And of course, the advanced interoperability, XCM in the case of Polkadot, bridging, and actually collaborating on a human level will enable us to build ecosystem 3.0. So in order to be successful as a community, as Web3, we need to scale, and we need to provide and make sure that digital assets, crypto assets, hence NFTs, are available to everybody, and they can be accessible to every business and every startup out there, and every creator as well. And in order to do that, we launched refundables. And often in the blockchain space, we talk about revolutionizing real world, disrupting real estate sector or disrupting art sector, because as we know, they're highly exclusive. A lot of artwork is highly expensive, or real estate and properties are not so easy to buy for an individual. Therefore, we have refundables. We can make fractional ownership in a click. We can enable collective ownership of an asset, of a very exclusive thing that you as an individual may not be able to buy on your own, but you can do this with other people. You can do this with the community. So, announcement number one, we're making a revolution with the CryptoPunk. Unique Network has bought CryptoPunk number 3042, an exclusive and expensive asset, and we're giving it away to community. We're planning to fractionalize it and give it away for you for free. So please scan the QR code. It will take you to a Telegram page, and you can claim your NFT using Polkadot.js wallet address or a MetaMask. This punk is coming from Ethereum. He's coming to Unique, or she rather, her name is Monique. Monique is coming to Unique Network. And community will take care of the ownership of this precious item. And using MetaMask and allowing this exchange and bridge to another ecosystem gives us a space to experiment, because now this bank is in the hands of the community. So it's up to you to decide how you want to manage ownership and get creative and tell us what you want to do. And big announcement number two. So, as I said, people are important. People are the center of the technology. People are the reason why we build this technology. Technology is built by people for the people. And today I'm very proud to announce a partnership of Unique Network with Lemonade Social. And I want to do a shout out to our great team, because you often see me or you often see founding team on stage, but actually we have 50 people working on Unique Network. We have our amazing product team, we have our core team, and they're working really hard to make this amazing technology a reality today. And I also want to do a shout out to Team Lemonade Social. I know you guys are watching us online today. Thank you for your dedication, and thank you for all you're doing for the creators community, and it's a great pleasure to collaborate with you. So what is Lemonade? Lemonade is a multi-chain platform that empowers creators to build Web3 communities with real-world utilities and rewards. And as you can see, Lemonade platform integrated Ethereum. It supports Polygon. And today we are announcing integration with Unique Network, and of course it's powered by Remark, and you can also see Moonbeam. So this integration in partnership with nesting functionality will take us to the next level of what we can do with NFTs. The platform offers you tickets, POAPs, rewards, discounts, gated access. They have events, virtual and offline or hybrid events and festivals. There is a shop, there is a hangout rooms, discussions, fire chat, side chats. You can mint, list, buy, and claim your NFTs as event tickets for the real world events and for the offline events. Or you can turn your products into an NFT for the real world or as digital collectibles. You can share your community on the platforms, and you can, of course, share revenue and split royalties and ensure that the ownership of the NFT is in your hands. And of course, after 2 years of being online mainly, it is always great to get together and to meet in real world. So it's time to celebrate. You can do it virtually, you can do it in a hybrid manner, you can create your communities on the platform, and you can exchange the NFTs that you mint on all networks on the platform. So this is how it looks like. You can purchase an NFT with different currencies, with different tokens. This is how you can claim your POAP, and it will look like. And of course, we have a surprise for you and a gift for you for making an effort to be here and for caring for the community. You can scan another QR code, which will take you to Lemonade social platform. And the team Lemonade will be doing an event on their platform to celebrate conference in Paris, ParisDOT. This collaboration, it's only the beginning. This is just the first step to test the waters, because as you know, we have Kusama and we have Polkadot. And Kusama is an experimental space where we run all the wild experiments. So there is much more to come and much more to announce with the team Lemonade, and we're very much into long-term partnerships. And this specific one also allows us not just to onboard your users and power your event, distribute tickets, but it can also power your business. You can onboard your company on the platform, and you can organize an event. You can get together, you can collaborate with the museum, you can collaborate with the sports team, you can collaborate with a concert, and we can provide a support for the hybrid event. We can make your NFTs nested, so we can bundle different NFTs one into another. You can now combine images with music files, soon to come stablecoins. All these things are very important to bridge the real world, to bridge all the different ecosystems, and to remind ourselves that in the center of the attention, we always have people. And it is always important to remember why we're building Web3. What are the values of the Web3? What is the mission we're here to accomplish? If you want to collaborate, you have my Telegram here. Please reach out. We work with businesses, we work with companies, we work with communities, because we're here to give you the technical solution and support that will power your initiative, that will power your creativity. Technology is just a technology. It will always be a very neutral thing without human and without creativity. So we need you to come to us and tell us the creative solution you want to build, so we can help you and we can all together build a better, more inclusive and creative world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Irina. And also big thanks for the special gift to celebrate Paris.comm. We have some minutes, if you agree, to pick some question.
Sure.
If we have question in the audience, I would say. Okay, one. Just a moment.
Thank you, Rina. Very great talk. I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but maybe you know about it. The campaign with the NFTs, pretty cool. Thank you for doing this for the community. Do you guys have a license actually to frictionize the NFT? Do you know if you need something like this, on like a security license actually?
No, because we just bought it, right? So when you buy an NFT, you own it, and then you can do whatever you want with your NFT. Because that is the point of Web3, of the ownership of the Web3. If you own a digital asset in your smart contract or in a contract, you have the right to exercise. Actually, there is a bundle of rights, right, that we can exercise over any property. So it applies to your house. It applies to any asset that you own. Same with NFTs, and I always remind that we can sell it, we can burn it, we can destroy it, we can rent it, fractionalize it. It's yours. Once it's yours, you have the right to exercise your rights.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question? Or something to add? I think it's clear and complete. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Get in touch.
Enjoy Paris.comm. Next week soon.
and please welcome our next speaker, Massimo from Subsquid.
Let me grab this. Hello, everyone. Oh, Jesus. I'm not used to lights in the face. As the presenter said, I'm Massimo Luraschi from Subsquid. I'm the developer advocate. And today I'm here to talk about indexing and how indexing will be enabling the Web3's mass adoption. In doing this presentation, or in preparing it, I thought about my experience as a transitioning from Web 2 to Web 3, and my experience as a developer, how this this whole experience shaped me, and what I think should look like, what I think mass adoption should look like. And I'm actually happy that after me there's a whole panel about mass adoption. So this is actually very, very on point. So that's why I created the presentation, and I want to talk about the user's point of view. Oh, this is a much better spot. For me, as a gamer, most of all, and as a user of web services, I want to talk about what happens when I use web services today, Web 2 web services. What we're trying to do here as a community in .sama, we're trying to substitute many of them with the Web 3 alternative. So as I go to a traditional finance service, I'm presented with a nice trade view chart that fills in instantly. I can play around with it. I can zoom in and everything. So we're trying to substitute that. And how do we do that? This is the question I'm trying to answer today. The same goes when I use basic services like file storage. I don't want my list of files stored. If I store it in a Web3 service, I want to consult a web page that gives me the same user experience, if not better. So I want that list to be loading instantly. If I go to a web streaming, like a video streaming service, I want my recommendation to load as I scroll through the page. I don't want to wait for 10 seconds, staring at a spinning wheel for the recommendation engine to fetch data directly from the blockchain and present it to me. Similarly, if I play a video game, gaming, I think, personally, as a fan of it, is the next frontier, is the next battleground for crypto mass adoption. And when I go to play a game, in this case World of Warcraft, if I scroll through the auction house, imagine in the future, these are all NFTs, these are all stuff that I play, earn, and potentially sell. And I want this to have the same service, the same level of refined experience that I find in everyday games today. And this is actually funny to me, especially this screenshot. I was listening to the other day to Zoe's presentation about Fala World. She was presenting a lot of World of Warcraft screenshot, and I was DiCaprio meme staring, pointing at the screen, thinking about this. So it's nice to see that this whole thing resonates across the ecosystem. So it means that we're in tune. But let's talk about the tools. This is Polkadot.js. Well, this is the web app page. But if you want to build those services, this is what we have right now. Or this could be what we have right now. Imagine trying to replicate that user experience only using this. It would pretty much look like this, right? Trying to be a MacGyver and stitch in a lot of spaghetti code and generating a very heavy client, because this is all client-based. If you're trying to build your web services with the blockchain as your only backend, it means that your client has to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So it would basically be the diagram above, where you're fetching data directly from the blockchain, and you have to do a lot of heavy processing on the client. What we're trying to propose, what we want to advertise or suggest at Subsquid, or make possible, most importantly, is to recreate the same user experience, both as a user and as a developer, that you have in Web 2, where you have a middleware in between, and you don't actually fetch data directly from blockchain. Your data is actually sort of cached, quote unquote, in a middleware where you can build your front end in the same way via classic APIs. And you would say, oh, yeah, actually, this is last edition from last night. It's already happening. There's already services. Now, this is just a dashboard, but Canaria land sales, it's exploding these days, and the community from Canaria built this dashboard using Subsquid. We didn't even ask them, but they put badges powered by Subsquid in there. I think they were so excited with the experience in developing it that they felt the urge to put it there. Personally, this is like sharing my personal experience as a dev advocate. Part of my job is to connect with these people, help them out, and it's super rewarding to get the feedback from them, listen, the positive and the negative at times, like how maybe they struggle with understanding part of the SDK, or most of the times, especially in this case, see that they were happy that I solved some problems for them, and this is the final result. This is another project on Astar instead, and it basically goes back to the first slide, to the first service, like providing financial services and have UIs that are snappy, that load instantly, and this is possible thanks to a middleware. But you would say, in the end, what you promise is just a lighter front end, and that is not true, because it's not just about caching instant, like caching data, and so make sure that your UI is snappy and loads instantly, but it's also about scaling. We talk a lot about scaling here, scaling solutions, and web services also needs to scale with the amount of users that connect to your platform. And blockchain is simply not made for that. You cannot solely rely on RPC calls. The nodes will be your bottleneck. Instead, where if you have a middleware, you can separate the concerns and make sure that you can build your middleware to respond to a vast amount of read-only calls to fuel your UI. And you can only think about like scaling your blockchain network for the writing of it. So transactions and requests that imply, well, writing to the blockchain. But it's not just that. It's also a better dev experience. Because, once again, you can separate the concerns. You don't have to modify your runtime to adapt to your UI. You can have front-end developers that have their own requests, their own needs. I need my API to be shaped like this because I need to show this data. You can create, thanks to a middleware, you can create aggregations on top of blockchain data. You don't have to do it in your runtime. It would be impossible or futile to do it. Whereas if you develop your dApp, thinking about having, or thinking that you can do this with a middleware, you can shape your middleware however you want to, however you need to, however your UI however your UI needs to, essentially. And yeah, that's basically the point. It's decoupling front-end, back-end, and blockchain development. Those are three different aspects, and you don't need to group them up. They don't need to be interdependent. And you say, but indexing is slow. So that's why at Subsquid we focused a lot on making it fast, on making sure that whenever you have to change something in your middleware, you don't have to wait a long time for re-indexing to happen. Because anything significant changes in the API requires a full scan of the blockchain. But that's why our latest release, which we call, it's codenamed FireSquid, is able to index Kusama balancing transfers in 15 minutes. The average performance is like 50K blocks per second, 50,000 blocks per second. And this enables developers to have the freedom of making any changes to your API as often as you want to, without having to wait for days for the middleware to be reindexed. And this is how it's done. We have a separation of the processing of the business logic and the indexing. Those are what we call FireSquid archives. And those basically do the pre-indexing, they do the normalization, they take care of being in sync with the blockchain and having all the necessary data in the normalized form, which then it gets exposed through a GraphQL gateway in the form of events, extrinsics, if present EVM log, or now with the contracts palette, contract log. And those are queryable, those are filterable, which means that when I build my processor, I can perform requests in batches, and I can perform requests for filter data. I don't need all of the data on the blockchain. I'm only caring about, for example, in the example that I just made, I only care about balances transfers. So I only request those, and the network traffic is minimal. It's reduced to only the data that I need. So FireSquid archives take care of the heavy lifting, and my API is going to be nimble and agile, fast, and will require a lot less storage as well. How does it look? When I'm developing my API, the only thing I need to take care of is instantiating my processor class, setting the data source. In this case, I'm telling it I'm connecting to Kusama archive, and I'm telling it I'm interested in the balances transfer event. And furthermore, I can filter it down. There's going to be another slide about it, but in this case, I'm telling it I'm only interested about the event arguments. I don't need to know, I don't need, in this case, information about the extrinsic that generated the event itself. Then what happens, I define my logic in here. When I launch the processor, essentially decoding all of the transfer information, and I'm putting the right stuff in the right places, essentially. The difference here is that this request is done in batches and processed in batches. So I connect to the processor, I tell him, look, I want all of the balances transfer. Can you please give it to me in a batch of like 500 at a time? Get this bundle of 500 events in one go. If I'm requesting more than one type of event, it's going to be a mixture of them, which is a little bit of a paradigm shift. I need to think more like, it's a bit of a paradigm shift, the same that you would do when you develop in MATLAB, for those that have done it. You have to think vectorial. I'm getting a bundle of these guys, and I need to process them as a vector. So it kind of looks like this, where I have an array of items, and I need to know that I don't know which type. In this case, it's only one, so it's easy. But I essentially have to do some sort of like sorting, or put the right, like I said, put the right things in the right places. But and it can be taxing if you want to, because you have to think about it differently. But this is how you obtain the performances, because it minimizes the I/O towards the disk. I process in a batch, and I only save at the end of the batch. So the lazy transaction towards the database makes sure that you get 50 blocks per second performance, as you can see here. I mean, it's a giant wall of logs, but you can see here 50K per second. And what other features are in the latest release, apart from immense speed? We have auto-unwrapping of pseudo, batch, and proxy calls. This is transparent to the processor. I don't need to even know that it's happening, because the archives do the heavy lifting for me. So in that case, what does it look like? When I ask for calls, I have them directly. And those could have been wrapped, like in the case of system remark. They could have been part of a batch all, and normally they would have been hidden from me. I would have to ask for system remark call and batch all, and then look into the extrinsic batch all and see if it contained. In this case, the archive did it for me. I'm only requesting system remark, and I get exactly that one. Another thing is, I mentioned it earlier, but I can fetch and process only the data that I need. So if I request, like in this case, it's just a post hook. So every block I'm requesting to execute a certain function, but it doesn't matter. What I'm saying here is that every time I encounter a block, I only want to be given the system extrinsic success. So only the extrinsic that succeeded. I don't care about those that failed, and I want only the extrinsic signature data, so I can filter it down to have a minimal network overload. Finally, but last but not least, actually, native support for Wasm. I did a workshop yesterday. Unfortunately, it wasn't recorded, but there's going to be a demo. I'm probably going to record one on our YouTube channel, and we're going to put up an example repository. So yes, Astar has deployed a contracts palette. It's available on Shibuya and Shiden, and we have a live example of indexing Wasm contracts. So we're so early in the ecosystem that we had to deploy a sample contract, so it's not very interesting. But as soon as we're in close relationship with the Astar guys, as soon as we have a live project, I'm going to make sure that we index that and show it to the community, make sure that the community is aware that there is this possibility. And you can see it for yourself. This should work. I haven't tested it, I have to admit. But it leads to our template repository, and you can see for yourself just by following the quick start README. You can see for yourself the performance, like the 50K blocks per second that I just talked about. Thank you for your attention. Those are my contacts, and once again, Subsquid is not. This is not just about me. The contacts are there just if you have any questions, and especially for the audience, anyone out there. That's my presentation. Actually, it was super early.
Thank you very much, Massimo. And yes, we have a few minutes if you have questions to. Okay, perfect.
Ouch.
Well, thank you for your presentation. So this question is more about indexes in general. Please enlighten me if I'm understanding this correctly. But I always had this concern in the back of my head about cached databases. So are there any security threats or concerns of using or hosting a indexer? And if there is, how do you mitigate those generally?
That's something I haven't talked about, so it's nice. Thank you for the question. So the archives that I talked about, those are, for now, managed by Subsquid, but it's just because we're not live yet. The ultimate goal is to create an economic system, an economic model that will guarantee that those will become a decentralized network. So infrastructure providers will come in and deploy an archive. We just provide the code for it, the image. They will just deploy it wherever they want to host it, and they will have to. We're thinking about a system where they have to stake tokens to make sure that they don't tamper with the data. And if eventually something fishy is discovered, we're going to slash their staking. So this is the mechanism, and I think we can build something better. We were still like that. That is essentially, besides developing the product and performance, this is probably going to be the main focus for Q3 and Q4, in the sense that, okay, staking is fine, but maybe we can do something better to guarantee that, yeah, the data is not going to be tampered with, and you can rely on it. We don't do that for the processors, for the API that you build yourself, because that is up to you. But I think that is an answer that dApps themselves will have to give to their users, in the sense that, okay, you're processing blockchain data, and I'm secure in the fact that the source is okay, but what about your processing? That is still, we need to think about it. But in the end, it's your dApp, so if you, I don't know, if you do something fishy with it, your user will eventually find out. Or I mean, it's your reputation that is on the line, I think.
Any question? No, I think so. Thank you very much. Thank you for the workshop.
Thanks once again.
Up next, we have our first panel of the day, hosted by Zoe, outside the Polkadot box and how to reach mass adoption.
Perfect. I think we have a seating order, but let's see. Okay, just take a seat. I think it's fine. Based on our little slide here. Cool. Oh yeah, the light is very bright. Hello everyone. Welcome to our welcome to our panel here. A very exciting topic: how to reach mass adoption for Polkadot. For who of you guys is this the first Polkadot event? Okay, some people, cool. Welcome to the Polkadot conference here, and nice to have you guys here. I hope you guys are learning a lot about what we are building in Polkadot. And today we want to focus specifically on mass adoption, what we are doing, and how we can actually increase traction outside our ecosystem. My name is Zoe. I'm Global Head Ambassador for Polkadot, and I also lead growth for Fala Network, a parachain on Kusama and Polkadot. And I'm here with 4 fantastic speakers today. Very, very nice mix because we have like Lucas and Brainjar from, Lucas from Centrifuge and Brainjar from Composable Finance, but they're both building a parachain. And then we have Toma and Doman who are actually doing more tool sets in the ecosystem. We had a slide with your titles, but welcome Lucas. He's actually co-founder of Centrifuge, Brainjar, co-founder and CEO of Composable Finance. Toma leads growth for Super Colony, and Doman is CMO and co-founder of Austral. Big applause for our speakers, please.
Hey. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is it working? Test?
Yeah. No?
Test.
No.
Hey.
We don't have any
okay,
audio.
good. Before we start here. Maybe we can
okay, this is better.
Cool.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Works? Yep.
Hello.
Yeah, so let's start with a little warm-up question here. I would like to hear from you guys, where do you currently see Polkadot on an adoption phase compared to other ecosystem? And especially because, I mean, the Genesis blog of Polkadot was, 2020, right? Like, so actually 2 years ago, the relay chain actually were produced, and we started to build on top of it. Parachains were launched end of 21. So in comparison to all the other ecosystems that are out there for quite a while, where do you see us like on this level? And Lucas, let's start with you, because you actually started to develop on Ethereum, right? And then decided to come over to Polkadot at one point.
I mean, I would summarize it as very early. I think the fact that actually the Genesis block was 2 years ago almost hurts us, because when you think of what happened in the last few years, it was mostly still building, because parachains didn't really go live until early this year, right? And without efficient cross-chain messaging, parachains are quite hard to make actually useful. So I think it's still super early. I think what Polkadot is trying to do is technically very different than what a lot of the EVM chains are doing, and so that does mean that you're starting from scratch on a lot of things. You get the opportunity to do a lot of those things better. You don't have all this history, and I think that's where the big chances for Polkadot. But it also does mean that building all this is still taking time. But I think with the stuff that's happening now, right? Most parachains actually started deploying significant functionality on their parachains, like sort of like in the ecosystem. You have wallets starting to get built and more front ends, block explorers, all this tooling that we all need. That hopefully at some point we will see we'll see the hockey stick.
Good, thanks. Let's do the round for this opening question, Brainjar.
Yeah, so my perspective is basically that I think it is also very early, but that I think one of the major use cases of parachains should be like core infrastructure for actually reaching out and providing functionalities to other ecosystems. as we saw like the growth of L2s and sidechains in the EVM context, as well as like the Solana hype cycle that happened last year, and then the Avalanche hype cycle as well. What was apparent was that a lot of these ecosystems essentially had kind of like inroads into the sort of Ethereum mainnet community, as well as like the applications that were building on mainnet originally decided to become cross-chain and multi-chain by deploying into those ecosystems. And also you sort of saw this like growth of developers just wanting to explore these other ecosystems for sort of having this first mover advantage. And none of this has really trickled into the Polkadot ecosystem. And so I think that it is kind of on every parachain team to do its best to reach out to other ecosystems and to create those partnerships and relationships and APY and TVL opportunities. I also think that the concept of the Kusama and Polkadot communities as being kind of one community is kind of like not really real. And I actually believe that the type of community that you want to create an initial user base for DeFi is exactly the type of community that exists on Kusama. These kind of like DeFi degens that came in with kind of small bags, but essentially were able to participate in a variety of different opportunities and now have some actual capital to deploy across multiple ecosystems. So I do think that over time, at least our team is interested in like heavily cultivating and targeting the Kusama strategy to sort of like rebirth what it means to be a DeFi degen on Kusama, and just .sama as a whole, and then sort of seeing from there, can we also attract additional quote-unquote degens from other ecosystems as well through this strategy.
Cool, thanks. And I mean, you do it also through a specific technological integration, where we talk about this later. Toma, your perspective. You guys, I mean, are not a parachain, right? You provide tool sets, even funding projects in the ecosystem. Would love to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, I definitely agree that we are on the early stage, but I want to believe that we are switching from so early stage to this early one, because right now we highlighted the problem of ecosystem development, of like lack of tooling. We should work on the community, do some public eye thing, and I think we did a good job during this last half of the year, ambassadors, leaders of parachains, and we go in the right way. Yeah, this is my thoughts.
Yeah, I think we're still super early in the development. We will need tools, like you said, to bring developers into the ecosystem. I think it was in Berlin, in the code that someone said that there's 27 million of Web2 developers and 18,000 blockchain developers. So it's a niche of a niche right now. So to bring developers to this space, I think we're going to need to work on tools. We're going to need to work on use cases, and we're talking mass adoption. I think that the last 3 speeches had the word adoption in it, so I think we're going into the right way. We're at Otrel, we'll support it. We're building a platform that brings different parachains into under one roof. So I think, yeah, with projects like us, super cool projects that were here in Paris, I think that we're moving towards the right direction.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Domen. And I mean, you guys even do a lot of education, as I know, about parachains, right? So you said you provide a platform integrating different type of parachains for Web2 developers to actually onboard them quicker into the Web3 world. Yeah, maybe you can touch a little bit on the education and also your biggest challenges or learnings that you actually had to build the platform and then get the feedback from Web2 developers to actually use the parachains that you integrate.
We actually started 2 years ago with a platform that provided identity to enterprise environment. So we've been actually talking to different audiences, not only developers, but to enterprises, agencies, corporations, and so on. And we've seen that the majority of them have the same problem. They don't want to change their everyday work. They don't want to disrupt their internal processes and so on. But they want to continue with the way they're doing work right now, plus getting some benefits from the decentralized world. So what we figured is that, okay, let's bring it under one roof. Let's bring parachains, functionalities, and use cases together, and start with the education. We need to spread the word about the use cases, the functionalities, about what each parachain teams are doing, in order to bring the Web2 developers into this world. We're currently in the building space stage, so yeah, we're obviously working on the education part together with you guys at Fala, with the Kilt team, Moonbeam, and so on. So I hope that in the next, let's say, couple of months, we're gonna roll out the platform and see what we've been working up so far.
Cool. Yeah, very excited about this. Great to have you also in the ecosystem from this perspective. Ranger, you touched base already on the integration between different ecosystems, right? And you guys are building very cool stuff, specifically combining IBC with XCM, right? I would like to hear from your perspective, because this technical integration has a lot of impact, of course, on the composable infrastructure. But how do you think this impacts the ecosystems, like individually, but also like maybe as a joint ecosystem, specifically because Cosmos and Polkadot have a very similar vision, right? And sometimes are seen as competitor.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot of primitives in the Cosmos ecosystem that we don't necessarily have at the moment. And I also think that there's some primitives that we have that the Cosmos ecosystem doesn't necessarily have. As an example, like when our bridge to Cosmos through IBC goes live, Akala won't have to bridge AUSD anymore over to the Cosmos ecosystem using Wormhole. They can now use trustless bridging. So now that obviously creates like a new stablecoin within the Osmosis like DEX community, so they can actually build like a real 3 pool that has like fully decentralized stablecoins within it. So I think there's kind of like 2 core pieces as to why I'm excited about this. One is like from the technical perspective, but then there's also the philosophical perspective. And I think I can start with the philosophical one, which is I do think that the types of people who are in the Cosmos ecosystem are slowly moving away from maximalism, at least from the perspective of like, from what we've seen from, obviously we're like constantly in between people fighting about, Polkadot versus Cosmos. But actually the Cosmos community is very ready to start interacting with the Polkadot ecosystem. And I think, from my perspective as well, the Polkadot ecosystem, at least the Kusama community, is very interested in doing the same as well with respect to the Cosmos ecosystem. So I do think that from a philosophical perspective, this merging of 2 communities that are focused on interoperability and applications that are higher order in functionality, and being able to have, DEXs across Cosmos and Polkadot be able to like share liquidity between the 2 chains, or for instance having lending occur on one chain on Polkadot and swaps occurring on another chain on Cosmos. I think the like opportunity space becomes much bigger than we've previously seen, where we're all kind of like limited at the moment in the Polkadot ecosystem by needing to use XCM between 2 parachains only. Now we can now talk about multi-hop protocols where you have XCM like for one step and then IBC for another step, and you can really build these like higher order applications. So I think from the perspective of like how can we create a user experience for a very simple application that lets people be able to create a portfolio across the Cosmos and Polkadot ecosystems, that's the type of infrastructure that we're providing for applications like this.
Cool. Thanks for sharing this. Lucas, you want to add anything on this?
So like we've been, you mentioned buildings like very early on in Ethereum as well, and I always was kind of like a multi-chain maxi. I never believed that we have the one true version of what a blockchain will ever be, and there will be many, many ways that people will get there. I think in the end, like a lot of these concepts are starting to look more and more similar, and we're figuring out as a whole industry what works and what doesn't. For example, Ethereum's charting designs are actually getting closer and closer to what like a Polkadot or even Cosmos with IBC looks like, just of how they think about it. And so like in a way, I think that's where we are today. So we're trying to experiment, and I think the more we can work together and learn from each other, actually the faster this innovation will happen. And you can see like within Ethereum, the fact that what EVM is really great at is it creates a very simple interface for people to actually cooperate. I think that's like the key thing about smart contracts that Ethereum has, is like anyone can call a function, and that allows you to build, like anyone to build with any other contract. And I think that's where we need to get to in like the blockchain ecosystem overall, where like people will be able to build transactions across many chains and like plug stuff together using bridges. And the bridges we have today, they're really like just, it's the very early version of it, because mostly what they just support is like moving tokens from A to B, but that's not nearly as interesting as what you talked about, which is like borrowing here to swap here and then like pay back something else here, right? And that's, I think, when we see like multiple chains really becoming useful.
Yes, multi-chain is the future. Good. Let's stick with you for a moment, Lucas. You gave a great presentation yesterday about centrifuge and also mentioned governance, right? I think you're personally pretty passionate about governance. Yeah. We know that the governance in Polkadot itself is still slightly centralized. If you look about the council has a lot of power, right? We have the process is, it just takes a lot of time, and there's still a lot of people that can influence things quite a lot. Very much different than an ecosystem like Bitcoin, right? Where it's completely or extremely decentralized, I would say. What do you think we can learn from this? And I mean, we know there's governance 2.0 coming up, right? What do you think we can learn from this for how our governance should be improved, if it should be improved from your perspective?
I mean, I would say Bitcoin's governance is basically just try to resist any change at all as long as you can, and make it extremely hard. And that is meaning they're very conservative, not innovating really, and some people like it because maybe as a store of value that's helpful, but obviously they're not able to keep up with anything that any other blockchain is doing. I think we are still like very much at the startup phase of crypto, right? And so like we do need to be able to innovate quickly. And the problem with governance is that it's actually not innovating quickly. The more people you have that try to make a decision, the harder it actually is to innovate and to make decisions that are maybe seen as risky, right? And so you end up like always trying to go for like the least maybe the version that has the least opposition, not the version that has the highest expected outcome, right? Like you can go one way, no one objects it, but everyone knows, okay, it's going to maybe solve the problem, but unlikely it will just not make the problem worse. And then you have something that has like they can maybe fix it, and it's super hard to do it, but like if we really do get there, right, that's where we want to get to. The problem is like with any large organization, right, as a startup versus corporate, like the enterprise versus like a giant state, right, there's always a challenge in this innovation. Not to go too far on a tangent, but that's like, I think really important to keep in mind when you're thinking about governance. Actually, you are building a system to make decisions that involves many different people, and you're trying to do really, like, you're either building a political system or some like company management structure, right? Like you can look at those structures and see, okay, like that's where you can start. I think, I mean, for us actually, the idea that runtime upgrade can happen through governance is extremely powerful, because what Ethereum always had problems with is like their hard forks are 100 they're 1,000 times hard, probably more than 1,000 times harder than a runtime upgrade in terms of how you coordinate in a community. But the problem is now, of course, it's very easy to kind of go down the slippery slope of centralizing your runtime upgrade process, your like how you decide what's getting built in this, and that's then not decentralized. If you build a crypto project and there's only one team able to run it, to develop it, that the entire community is dependent on, then you're not building a decentralized project, right? Because in the end, that whoever is doing that, they hold the protocol hostage. So now, of course, like you have to start somewhere, and a lot of people are willing to compromise in the beginning, right? When you don't have a community, there's no one else to do it, so obviously you need to start somewhere. But I think, luckily, we do have a lot of tools in Polkadot, and yes, governance 2 is going to make it a lot better to actually start doing this. And I would actually say, like, I recently checked, and I do think this is quite embarrassing, but more than half of the parachains still use a pseudo key. Which really isn't the idea. Like, we have democracy proposals at council, we have all this stuff actually to start asking the community to decide what should happen to the chain. And we do this actually, like Centrifuge, I think we got rid of, 6 weeks after launch, we got rid of the pseudo key. And that was, I think, an important step that I think most people should dare to try.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of treasuries or councils are still not launched, right? Maybe it's not the focus for the parachains itself to like go into the whole governance process, but I think you break it down nicely to see, okay, we have like the technological integration of like decentralized governance. Now, on top, we have a lot of like, through the council, a lot of things and processes that are maybe not still, yeah, a bit more centralized, but the architecture and the vision is there. That's cool. Toma, I want to hear from your perspective, because you're building the Polkadot Alliance. You gave a presentation about it yesterday, which also is like, yeah, you can see it as a small council in the Polkadot ecosystem, right? How do you want to change these, the centralization in our council and the governance with the Polkadot Alliance?
So firstly, if we're talking from the experience, right now to get the treasury proposal, I think most of you knows how it's hurtful right now, how much time it will takes. So yeah, Polkadot Alliance is going to change this flow. It will be pretty decentralized because like the members of Polkadot Alliance is a key players of the ecosystem, is an innovators, leader of parachains. So it will be based on government 2.0 somehow. And yeah, it will be faster in a few times. It will be easier to get the support from the community and funding for your like needs and project. So yeah, the purpose of that was just to speed up the ecosystem growth. I think it's the most important, because right now it's not work like it should be.
Cool, I'm very excited about the Alliance to come. I would like to dive deep into a bit more like technical tooling questions, because we know, I think we have the best tech, right? As a blockchain, Polkadot is very strong on that side. I think adoption, marketing, there are a lot of things that we can learn and improve, but it's a very special architecture in general. So actually, yeah, let's start to talk a little bit about Ink. Toma, you guys are big Ink promoters at Super Colony, right? Where do you see actually, the future of Ink, specifically in comparison to like other smart contract platforms like Wasm that Composable is also using? And I would like to hear your opinion on this afterwards as well.
Yeah, we're working on Ink adoption and improving this experience for 1 year, I guess. We have created already 4 tools for smart contract development. One of them is OpenBrush. So it's a library for develop smart contracts. And from Super Colony perspective, we think it's really important to work not only from like attracting developers, but to create the use cases on that. We could create like 10 of the tools, right? And if no one will use it, it not works. No businesses there, no leaders. Why we created that? So, and I think it's what we should do right now is to create use cases on this tool and support it by the ecosystem. Because like, why some people from Ethereum, when it's like easy to do, it's like really, we see the flow, how it works, right? To hire some Solidity developers, deploy it on Ethereum, it works. Right now, we have some smart contracts hub for deploying Ink, and it's like contract pilot not work itself right now. And really important to mention that the relay chain itself was not created for smart contracts. So it's not easy to do, first of all. Like we bring the working thing from another ecosystem, and we should build these conditions to make it work, right? And what is more, I think parachain should work and focus on Ink too, because right now only Parity, and we are working on that, and the process is so slow. And other parachain who want to work with this contract pilot should contribute and implement some solutions.
We do as well at Fala Network.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, very interesting perspective. Brenda, from your perspective, please.
Yeah, so I think for us, so when you look at like Wasm smart contracting already that's out there, Cosm Wasm, there's already like hundreds of use cases out there. There's already CW20 tokens in the billions of TVL getting moved around every single day. There's more than 15 plus chains that already integrate Cosm Wasm. They have a huge developer community already, and it's also very generic, so it's not necessarily tied to the underlying consensus state. And so when we looked at Cosm Wasm as a framework, we said, okay, let's strip out all like the Tendermint bindings and basically build a Cosm Wasm VM as a palette onto a parachain. And actually it was obviously difficult to do, but like we've already demoed that has successfully worked. And so I think for us, not needing to educate people from ground zero about how to build a Wasm smart contract to do XYZ. Like basically, the moment Cosm Wasm is deployed on Picasso, you can copy paste all of the applications from Juno, from Osmosis, from all these different, from like Terra Classic, Terra 2.0, et cetera, and just deploy them onto Picasso. I think that's very powerful because there's basically very limited adjustments necessary for now these types of Cosm Wasm applications to go multi-chain as in the same way that like Sushi went multi-chain by just deploying the same code on multiple different chains. So I think for us, the decision to go all in on Cosm Wasm was more so just a, I think in general, it's basically just has adoption at the moment. There's use cases at the moment. It's well maintained, and I think it really fits the substrate use case quite nicely.
Yeah, and I want to share the really interesting insight after Wasm conference that we hosted on May. It was like 800 online attendees, and when we did the report, surprisingly for me, more than 60% of attendees was CEO and business leaders, not builders. Like mostly the conference was focused on technical stuff, but you see the problem that business leaders doesn't see like Wasm and contracts on Polkadot as a solution. It's a problem. They are looking for the answer, but they couldn't see that. We focus on builders. Okay, it's really important, but we should show some use cases, how it's really work. Why it's better to do it on a Polkadot, not on Ethereum.
Exactly, yeah, to follow up, we need to think about the adoption among enterprises. We need to think about use cases, tangible use cases that will be used by the enterprise environment, because otherwise we're just preaching to those that think the same and not bringing new people, new companies into the environment.
But I mean, there are also like two different levels, right? Like on adoption side, you mentioned enterprise focus, but you have the developers directly. You have Web 2, Web 3 developers. Then you have like the corporates and so on. How do you differentiate between these different focus groups, I would call, or customers when you actually create your developer tools?
I think that we need to focus on those, on the developers, but to explain how they can sell the use cases to the enterprises, because otherwise we will not reach mass adoption if the enterprise environment is going to be using it, and if it's going to, we'll be talking to those that, you know, will use it only, will build it only for the people that are, I don't know, sitting in small rooms. So to bring that up again. Yes, we're talking a lot to the developers, but we are bringing the use cases that the economy, that the real economy can use in front of it, so they know what they have to do to bring it up. One use case like this was from the European Union, digital product passport. It's going to be used by the manufacturing companies in Europe. So yeah, this is the things that we need to focus on. This is the things that we need to work on, and this is why we're building the platform, to provide the developers with the tools to work on their use cases.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Domen. I want to go there into this more mass adoption and zoom out perspective in a bit, but I want to dive a bit more deeper into some other developer tools. I actually went to the Solana Hacker House on Monday, I think. It was my first hacker house. It was pretty cool, actually. Got to learn a lot about the Solana ecosystem, and also actually learned that they are building I don't know if it's a new language, but Solang. It's actually a language that they use to compile Solidity to to Rust, right? Or for substrate-based chains and everything. And I mean, we have substrate, right? We have substrate palettes to actually do this. How do you see, and maybe we start with Brendan, how do you see this this language? Do you think it will, you know, or this compiler language, does it have a future, and especially in comparison to the tools that we are offering?
I mean, I think what's important to realize is that Rust as a framework for building decentralized technologies is probably going to be the winner long term. I do think that there is, even within the Ethereum community, a shift to create Rust-based tooling. Georgios from Paradigm keeps on shipping different things, different tooling around just Rust-based tooling for Ethereum. And so I think there is this shift where basically, you know, Wasm is also Rust, substrate palettes, Rust as well. So I do think over time there will be this shift that everybody in the sort of decentralized technologies community should be proficient in the Rust-based context. And I think it was really salient of the founders of Polkadot to build Substrate using Rust, because it just really attracts a different class of developer than Solidity smart contract writers.
Lucas, what's your opinion on this?
I think Rust in the backend makes a lot of sense. Rust is extremely powerful, but with great power comes great responsibility, as people say. The thing that Solidity is extremely good at is it's giving you a very, very small space to work in. So if you're actually building a token, for example, the transfer function doesn't have anything besides the actual instructions of what it is, and it's extremely concise to read what it does. And so if you're building a lot of small different components, that makes it very easy to make them safe and not think about all the other potential things that could go wrong around it. And I believe that is and I've been writing a lot of smart contract code. I've been reading a lot of it, auditing a lot of it. I think that does make it ultimately one of the safer languages to build stuff in. But it is just all about the tooling. I think if we can, so for that, actually, Solidity has done a lot of good stuff to just let you basically build these applications in the safest way possible today, because it's like building a rocket, right? You can't afford to crash because otherwise you have billions in dollars of research and development costs that just blow up in the atmosphere, and so that I think Solidity really has like a lot of lessons that we can learn from, especially around the developer tooling, maybe also some of the language features. I think Rust has the language features that make it inherently a safe language. What we don't have yet is we don't have the all the other tooling and the way to actually kind of like a style to write Rust in that makes it safe. We're learning that with palettes, but I would say still it's harder to audit them. It's harder to see what they're actually doing, and kind of like even review, right? Like what a palette is, how it's deployed, what a chain does. Like you can look on Etherscan what a smart contract does, and like the kind of like verify actually what it does, which is almost impossible to do for any parachain out there. I would probably assume that like if I tried as a layman, like try to actually just look at the code, I wouldn't even know where to start. Right? It would take me several hours. And I think that this is the part where we need to kind of still improve on Rust and other like also Wasm-based smart contract languages.
And I mean, do you think this compiler language will have a future? Because again, we have substrate Wasm, right? It's like actually, do you need another compiler language actually?
I don't know. I don't actually know if is Solong a Solidity transpiler, or is it? I'm not sure how it works. So can't answer that.
Compiler language, yeah, from Solidity to Solana and Substrate as well.
Okay. I think it compiles to Wasm directly, if I'm not mistaken, like from Solidity to Wasm, not to Rust. So. Yeah, and that Solidity has a lot of the limitation. I think it's a problem here, but it could be a good entering point from Solidity dev, like to show the advantages of Wasm. But we created the alternative version of that. It's called Sol to Ink. So it will highlight how Substrate is cool and awesome. Like it's compiled from Solidity directly to Ink, and then you could change the ink and go there. So. For example, you want to switch your DAX from Solidity and Ethereum ecosystem to Polkadot, you can switch it to Ink and then add some improvement that Ink has, but not Solidity has. And it will be compiled to Wasm. So, and like in 2 weeks, for example, you will have the project on Ink. And I think here is important that by this tool, what we could do, like OpenRush and Sol to Ink, to show the business how much time and money they could save on that. For example, using OpenRush and Sol to Ink and other tools, you could save half of the year of development. You can hire not 5 developers, but 1 from Ink, like who knows Ink, for example. Yeah, and it will attract more use cases here. I think it's all of us should work on that more, on these researches, and to show it to the people, not just be on this bubble.
There's also this thing called Ethereum FE. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but all of these things like Solidity, Rust, Situation, transpiling, this stuff is like 2 years away easily. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Can you say what Ethereum FE is?
It's basically you write contracts in Rust and then deploys into the EVM.
Okay. I mean, kind of like so like the Solidity team already built Yule, which is this like intermediary language that should allow people to build contracts in other languages, compile them to Yule, and then compile that into EVM. I think that actually could be an interesting way for Polkadot also to look at, like creating a Yule to Wasm, basically. And that is one of the reasons actually why Ethereum started with Yule, is like because they wanted to be able to build into the EVM, but also at the time Wasm, Ethereum Wasm was kind of like an actively researched project. But now you kind of have this like intermediary layer that isn't fully optimized, but it's much lower level than Solidity and other languages, so you can like easily plug in both like different backends and front ends, like languages that get pushed into it. And I think that's like there's a lot of interesting stuff there that you can take and kind of like also look at Ink of like how you could get that into Yule and, for example, allow people to deploy Ink contracts on Ethereum, which it could be interesting actually.
Yeah, let's discuss this further after this panel. There are a lot of good ideas here. We have 5 minutes left, and I would like to zoom out a little bit more. We went very deep into like the tooling set, and I would like to hear from all of you. And Dome, maybe you want to start. What do you see the biggest opportunity for Polkadot to become more mass adopted? Let it be really on the technological level to say, okay, XCM is the future, you know, to go cross-chain, or a specific use case that you see is only possible on top of Polkadot. Where do you see the opportunity for our protocol?
I think that the biggest future, I think, is in the enterprise adoption. Again, I'm going to go there. I think that bringing multiple different use cases into the environment is going to boost the adoption and bring more developers into the ecosystem. Having us as one of the gateways to different functionalities of different parachains, hoping that we can do our job to bring developers into this ecosystem.
Thanks, Toma.
Yeah, I agree with the thoughts, and what I want to add that we should go outside this bubble of Polkadot and just to show that the ecosystem, for example, going to some Web Summit, I don't know, Ethereum things, because right now it's feel like I'm attending more than 5 conferences like on this for like 4 months, and I meet up the same people all the time. Like, and we're talking, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, let's work on that and share with some people who you already know, these things. So maybe we should go and do it wider. This is the main thing that we should look.
Yeah, very much so agree. I think we're definitely one of the biggest proponents of that for sure. But yeah, as far as like from a technological perspective, I actually think that there is a possibility that Substrate becomes the piece of Polkadot infrastructure that leaves the Polkadot ecosystem. So like Substrate-based rollups on top of Celestia, or perhaps having parachains become settlement layers for like rollups in some other ecosystem. So I do think that for me, the biggest reason, the most bullish part about Polkadot, I think, is the Substrate framework. And I think that over time, as long as more use cases can be shown for palettes and reasons for Substrate to actually leave the Polkadot ecosystem are apparent, then I think that could be the piece of technology that really goes cross ecosystem.
Cool. Yeah, all in Substrate. Lucas.
We've always focused on bringing like real world borrowers and lenders into DeFi. So already today we've like financed over 190,000 loans, I think, to like different people all around the world. And so a lot of these people didn't even know that their money came from, actually 99.9% probably don't know that their money came from DeFi. And so like it is something that we're doing every day, I think. And ultimately there, like, it's not about blockchains, it's about like, okay, what is the problem you're solving? And I think DeFi is solving the problem of building a radically more efficient and transparent financial system. And that is a very attractive proposition to a lot of fintechs, a lot of well, not the banks that are in power today, but like competitors, if they want to build a better bank, right? Like they're going to look at it and say, actually, like if I use DeFi as my backend, if I finance loans on the blockchain, that's actually like a way that I can be competitive. I can build a more scalable, future-proof business. So that's what we focus on in all of this.
Cool. So you're doing it already on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Trying to. No, great. Thank you for sharing these insights. It's very cool. And I think we had like a great overview of really seeing, where we can go, where we need to improve. And I loved really this different perspectives here on this panel from really parachain builders and ecosystem tool providers. I think we have some time, 1 minute. So if there's 2 questions, are there any questions from the audience to the speakers directly, or anything you would like to emphasize on? Yeah, I see a question from Crust Network there. There's still? Two questions. Okay, cool.
Okay, hi. One question regarding the assumption that Rust is going to become like the dominant language and force in smart contract development. I would like that to be true. I've been developing like smart contracts for the past 5-6 years. But to me, it seems that now there's a very big road ahead in terms of built out smart contract libraries that are alive on Solidity, which are going to be very, very difficult to, you know, just the very, let's say if I'm not thinking as an engineer, if I'm thinking as a business person, and I see that I have this already built out infrastructure in Solidity that I don't have to code my own contracts, or if I code them, I can reuse a lot of the stuff from before. And in Rust, now I have to do all of these things from scratch. It might happen that it's too late for us to replace the base, and we'll just end up with Solidity being like the JavaScript of blockchain. Yeah.
I would encourage you to look at Wasm in more depth because, like, it's not like, for instance, in Solidity we have like the compound ERC20 governance token, right? We have like the compound lending market model. We have like Uniswap v2 that everybody forks. So we have like these incredibly forkable things within the Solidity context that have been tested by like hundreds of protocols. But within the Wasm context, like the use cases are there. The TVL has also been there and is currently still there. And so I think over time, Wasm is definitely catching up, if not already. There's some great DEXs built already. Mars protocol is a lending protocol built on Wasm as well. So I do think the libraries for Wasm will definitely, maybe not this year, but like next year, hopefully there's enough applications and enough exploits to test these applications and their security. Or not that we want exploits to happen, but one of the reasons why like these libraries in Solidity are so used is because you know they're safe, right? Because you've seen how people have been able to exploit them. So over time, I do think that Wasm will definitely catch up.
I mean, I could say the same thing for Substrate. I mean, I believe like Substrate has a lot of the, like the account abstraction model, like giving you proxies, multi-sigs, batch calls, like democracy at a base level, different ways of locking tokens. Like all of this stuff is actually like 3-4 years ago were a novelty in Ethereum, and like, yeah, like Cosmos built the first governance thing that was widely used. The first farming contract was built by Synthetics many years ago, and everyone uses that now, right? But like that's as simple as just like locking some tokens in a pallet and Substrate, creating a token as well. So I don't know. Like, I think actually not so much the Solidity libraries and more the testing and the tooling is currently what's probably pulling a lot of people into Ethereum. I know like if I want to write a pallet and try to run it, like if I know nothing about it, it's going to take me hours and hours to just set it up. I can go to Remix and launch a smart contract and have a token, an ERC20 token up and running by just Googling it within 5 minutes, right? And that's I think where we need to make it easier. And then on the other side, like the auditing tools, right? Like they're just quite far ahead to like once you've built something, make it safe.
Thank you for answering this question. Do we have time for one more? I know that there was one more question. If we can take it.
Hi, Lut here from Crust Network. We talked about developer adoption quite a lot, and I think when I can trust the numbers and metrics we see is that Polkadot is actually doing quite well on the number of active developers, especially also when we look at the growth of the numbers of developers. But one thing I was missing a little bit in this discussion is the end user itself. And I think that's also where mass adoption starts. We need to onboard the user. And compared to other ecosystems, I think it can be quite challenging especially for newcomers to get used to using the Polkadot ecosystem with all those different parachains and bridges and forth and back. So what's your take on that? And how can we maybe improve that in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, very good question. And I think that's definitely, I think maybe more for the parachains again, because you actually need the end users in the end, right?
Yeah, I mean, I gave a talk about this yesterday. But basically what we're building with XCVM, so like this idea of single contract deployment and being able to pass messages across multiple chains, multiple ecosystems, using a variety of bridges and having a proxy wallet to just handle all the signatures required for that. That's essentially what we're trying to do. So I do think that even though the vision of like XCVM goes much further than Polkadot, I do think that one of the key use cases for it would actually be just like having parachains, building applications on top of like 2, 3, 4 parachains and not having it be a mess of Polkadot.js, basically. Also on the UX perspective, there is like Talisman and a few other like new wallet providers that are making the experience much more streamlined than Polkadot.js, but definitely the interoperability from a UX perspective is difficult, and I think the issue has been that we've seen interoperability. We thought about interoperability first before understanding what it actually means for the end user. And so we're basically like flipping the switch on that and saying interoperability is necessary for creating ease of use and delight for a user experiencing a new application for the first time.
Thanks for sharing. Anyone else wants to add on this? To this? Cool. Okay, I think then we are out of time here. Thank you so much again, everyone, for the speakers to join and for everyone joining to this panel. I think some of the speakers are available afterwards if you want to discuss more on some specific topic. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No, you didn't have the clicker.
Hello. And our next speaker, Markian from Super Colony.
Hello, everyone. So the speech today will be about IMP Metaverse Protocol, connection layer of the Metaverse. I'm going to start from a little bit telling about myself and what I do. So I'm into Polkadot for quite a while now, and my company is Super Colony. We've been famous in this ecosystem for doing things like fundamental things like OpenBrush, PSP22, and creating the Wasm field and making Wasm a really workable thing. And now this is something we also want to do to the Metaverse, to the more broader Metaverse space. And fundamentally, we are a venture studio, being a venture studio means building companies, creating companies. And so one of our companies, the name is Asylum, and Asylum is working in a metaverse space. The problem we discovered while we are working on in the metaverse space is a connection layer problem, connection layer of the metaverse. What do I mean by that, and why does it matter? Before we go into that, let's firstly explore what we mean when we say metaverse. Okay, so for me, metaverse is a virtual reality, a more and next immersive version of internet where you can live, shop, interact, have fun, and work. And when you look at the metaverse that we have today, we can see a couple of problems with them, and we can see that what we currently have is not exactly aligned with the definition of the metaverse. And I think yesterday, Bruno touched on a couple of those. And these are also things that we discovered as well. And so starting from the first and most interesting one, we see a lot of metaverse projects, but none of them are real metaverses, right? And the first and fundamental thing for a metaverse to exist is a connection between all of those spaces. So it's an interoperability issue. It's an ability to have your digital item placed in one game and then placed in another game seamlessly with no additional code required out of the box. It also is about consistency. What I mean by consistency is where you can have your NFTs evaluated in one game and in another game by the same metric to not disrupt the balance inside the metaverse. Actually, currently what we already have experience in some of the metaverses, like Sandbox and Decentraland, is the disruption of this balance, even in the closed ecosystem. And that is why it's extremely important to think about consistency between those and put that in design. Things like game mechanics, NFTs or digital objects shouldn't just store how it looks like, definitely not images, right? They should include all needed properties in order to provide the balance inside the system and consistency. And the next would be, of course, nesting and multi-resource. And what we actually see today when we say NFTs, a lot of people associate it with images. And it's not surprising, because even if you look at the standard, ERC 721 standard, NFT equals image, because inside the standard, you have this image property, like the property literally called image. And so what can you expect when it's inside the standard, right? And we see there are lots of efforts to change that, but the ecosystem itself, I'm not talking only about Polkadot, generally, the ecosystem lacks the common standard that wouldn't be associated with images. That is also the reason why there is so lack of trust to the NFTs. Lots of people associate it just with COM or again with image, which isn't what NFT is supposed to be. NFT is a technical standard that can be used and that we are planning to use for digital objects in the metaverse. And so nesting is an ability for NFTs to include another NFTs, which works then like a Lego. And it is also extremely important to have, as in a real world. We have, for example, a table that consists of the top and the bottom. This could be as a separate NFTs. Or more practical example would be like a person. You have a person, and then person has a jacket and a hat. And the hat could be on one person or another person, and you should have you know, the ability to seamlessly transfer those items. If they are all locked inside one NFTs, you obviously can do that. And then the next thing is something called digital identity. So again, what we currently experience in all of the metaverses is that all of the games or metaverse spaces, they all have its own digital identities, right? Or when you log into a different metaverse, you have completely different identity, and they're not synchronized. And if we want to have a metaverse, that's also something that needs to be changed. As looking for a real life, if you're in a coffee shop or you're in a school, in all of those places you have same identity. And this is what should be in the metaverse as well. And so the last item, and probably the most important one, is the economy item. Economy, right? What we currently see, and that's not only about metaverse projects, it's generally about the internet space. We don't see a lot of connectivity between those spaces, right? They're all separate and not very much connected, at least not out of the box. And why is that important? Because as we already could have seen from history, every time the economy is opened, for example, when we built roads to India and traders were going through the roads and bringing products, the economy has grown. This is exactly the same for a digital world. We need those roads, and we need them compatible out of the box. So, to summarize the point, why does it matter to have a basic layer? I want to compare it to the internet. In my opinion, metaverse is very similar to the internet in that context. We can enjoy the internet seamlessly because there is no problem of connection in the internet. And why? Because everyone uses the same TCP/IP protocol. And that is same about the metaverse. What we see now is people focusing on the content, where in reality, we would like to firstly have the fundamental, and then we can build content on top of it. Without the fundament, there will be no ability for content to really coexist with each other. So, IMP protocol. Solution. We see IMP protocol as a combination of 6 items. It's still in development. And it's actually the first conference where I am talking about the IMP protocol. It's yet in the early stages, but already has gotten an approval of Web3 Foundation. And we are moving it to the production version pretty soon. Important to note that we believe this protocol shouldn't be as part of one ecosystem or another, or one company or another. It should be driven by community and approved by the community. And so that's why we are working now to get connections and engage a lot of people into the process. And we're well aware this initiative is not only the one, and we are not only the ones that understand the importance of the problem. So we would like to unite people who also have this understanding and get into those communities and work together to resolve the problem. And so, in our opinion, how we see the IMP protocol. IMP means Interoperability Metaverse Protocol. So first thing is NFT, or we call it Digital Objects Provider. We'd like to call it digital objects, as we think NFT is technology, and technology should be kept like NFT is used a lot right now in the for users, but we don't use for users words like TCP or IP. Our users are not very much aware of TCP, and we also think it should be the same about NFT. So digital objects. First thing, game mechanics as part of the NFT standards. The same that I was mentioning before. To NFT not only includes the visuals, the object, but also include game mechanics inside of it, and that should provide the balance. Then we've come with an abstraction. This is an abstraction of the digital item protocol. If you look at the right, you see a template. So in a traditional NFT world, we had an abstraction called collection. Template is somewhere similar to collection, but not, because template is like it's like a template of your NFT when you put your properties, and then you mint an item. An item means an NFT based on that template. So having one template, you can mint as many items as you need. And then you have an instruction called interpretation. Interpretation means that, like the problem in you have many different games, and you can argue that in different games the same sword could have like different visual look, and how we can interpretability then. Yeah, so that's why one template could have different interpretation. Like in one game it could look one way, and in another game it will look another way. And so a template creator can do multiple interpretations. And then the thing called tags. Tags is also an abstraction that we have created in order to make games understand items out of the box. So tag is a language, like an association that you put to an item to help game understand how it should visualize it, and whether it supports it or not. And the second thing would be DAO. And why we think DAO is important and should be part of the protocol is because we believe that DAO is a necessary foundation for this to exist, because people need to be engaged into the metaverse in order to be like really participative and in order to have this real life experience. If you don't allow users to participate inside the metaverse, they wouldn't get this feeling of really being part of. That's why I think it's extremely important to include DAO inside. And so in our scenario, DAO will govern all of those abstractions. And for example, DAO will govern how an interpretation is added, and then an individual could accept or not accept like a different interpretation. You will have that ability. The other important thing is the history of a digital object. So like in real life, when you have your sword or your head and you're coming through life, that head changes, right? And same should apply to the NFTs. If you play in a game and your sword has grown in its capability, like it had 3 points and now it has 5 points, that is represented on chain, and that is with you, that is owned by you because it's on chain. Nobody could take that from you. And if it's interoperable, it's also in a dozen of other games. So if one game accidentally stops working or the project is closed, that's not a problem, because your same sword is a dozen of other games, and it's also DAO governed. So it's not like a template creator could just in one moment change everything, and one day your sword looks like this and the other day it looks like that. Isn't possible. So that is an image that shows the implementation of the protocol. On the right hand, you see a protocol itself, and on the left you see an implementation of it. This is the case for Asylum. The things that were mentioned before, like you have a digital protocol, digital objects protocol, DAO protocol, and so on. And on the left hand, you have a working product, because obviously internet doesn't exist with only on protocol layer. Internet also has internet providers, and this is also the case for Metaverse. We need to have one protocol, and then we need to have a provider. And this is also the beauty, because as in internet we can have multiple providers, but they will be interoperable with each other out of the box if they use the same protocol. So we are not closing the possibility to define to create as many providers as is needed, and they have the interoperability between themselves and between spaces inside them. Yeah, so this is my Twitter and Telegram. Contact me, reach out to me if you're interested or if you have any questions. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a little bit time to pick one or two questions. If someone want to ask, I would say, yeah. You? No, sorry. I don't think so. Thank you very much, and feel free to connect in the Pillar Room. So it's time to take the pause, the lunch break. We will coming back at 2 p.m. 30 with a complete program on the main stage and also a workshop on the level 9. I wish you a good lunch and see you later.